Charles Stanley's life reads like something out of a novel. Born in the small town of Dry Fork, Virginia on September 25, 1932, his story began during one of the hardest times in American history, the Great Depression. People all around him were struggling just to survive. Jobs were scarce, money was tight, and families often went hungry. His parents, Charlie Stanley and Rebecca Hall, were among those barely scraping by. And then, when Charles was just a baby, tragedy struck. His father died suddenly at only 29 years old, leaving Rebecca a young widow with a newborn son to raise alone. That devastating loss created a hole in Charles's heart that would shape him for the rest of his life. Growing up without a father haunted Charles. He often spoke of the emptiness he felt, always wondering what kind of man his father was and what kind of guidance he might have offered. That absence stayed with him, not just as a sad memory, but as a constant ache. Over time, this longing deeply influenced his spiritual beliefs. He began to see God not just as a distant figure but as the ever-present Father he never had. This powerful idea would later become central to the way he preached and taught others about faith. When Charles was 9 years old, his mother remarried, hoping to bring some stability into their lives. But instead of comfort, her new husband, John Hall, brought terror. John was an abusive alcoholic, and their home quickly became a place of fear and violence. Charles witnessed his stepfather physically attack his mother, and the constant threat of violence was so overwhelming that young Charles sometimes slept with a loaded gun beside him, just in case. The trauma hardened him and taught him early that survival often depended on inner strength. More than anything, it pushed him to seek refuge in something bigger than himself, his faith. In the middle of all this chaos, church became his sanctuary. His family's Pentecostal background ran strong, and his grandfather was one of the founding members of Emmanuel Pentecostal Holiness Church in Dry Fork. The church's vibrant worship, emotional sermons, and passionate prayers offered Charles a place where he could feel safe and connected to something greater. Often, when things were too much to bear at home, he would sneak away to the church basement and pour out his pain in long, intense prayers. Those moments of desperate prayer not only comforted him but also planted the seeds for his future calling. Though Charles would eventually become a Baptist, those early Pentecostal experiences stayed with him, shaping his preaching style with emotional energy and directness that captivated audiences throughout his career. At 17, still unsure whether ministry was his true path, Charles visited his grandfather in North Carolina. It was there that he received the advice that would become his life's guiding principle. His grandfather told him, "If God tells you to put your head through that brick wall, you run for it. It's his job to make the hole." Those words stuck with Charles forever, reminding him to trust fully in God, no matter how difficult the path might seem. Determined to prepare himself for ministry, Charles pursued his education with passion. He attended the University of Richmond and later Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary in Texas. This was a time when American Christianity was rapidly changing. Bible colleges were thriving, evangelism was gaining national attention, and figures like Billy Graham were bringing religion to living rooms across the country. Charles threw himself into studying theology, learning ancient Greek and Hebrew, and perfecting the art of preaching. His goal was simple but ambitious: to make the Bible feel real and meaningful to everyday people. By the time he was 25, Charles was already serving as a pastor at Fruitland Baptist Church in North Carolina, leading a small congregation of about 150 people. He also taught homiletics and evangelism at a nearby Bible institute. Even though his salary was modest, his passion for ministry burned brightly. He spent his days counseling farmers, factory workers, and ordinary families who were battling their own struggles with poverty and uncertainty. In 1958, at just 26 years old, Charles reached an important milestone. He was ordained as a Baptist minister. This was a big deal, especially at such a young age, and it opened the door for what would soon become a groundbreaking career. Around this time, television evangelism was starting to rise, offering new ways to reach people far beyond the walls of any one church. Charles recognized the potential, and before long, he began to step into that world himself. Over the next decade, Charles moved between several churches in Ohio and Florida. Each new position presented its own unique challenges, but also valuable lessons. In Miami, he served during the tense days of the Cuban Missile Crisis, helping to double his church's attendance through his steady leadership. In Bartow, Florida, he intentionally chose a smaller church, believing that building strong relationships with a tight-knit congregation was just as important as leading a large one. These experiences prepared him for the much bigger stages that awaited him. In 1969, Charles accepted the position of associate pastor at First Baptist Atlanta, not knowing that he was stepping into a church full of conflict and division. The congregation was split over theology and politics, and tensions were so high that during one heated meeting, Charles was physically assaulted. Yet he refused to walk away. For 2 years, he stood firm, enduring the hostility with patience and unwavering faith. Finally, on October 1, 1971, the church voted to make him senior pastor. At 39, Charles inherited a fractured congregation. Many of the dissenters left, and with their departure, the church began to heal. Charles's leadership brought stability and growth, laying the foundation for what would become one of the most influential ministries in the world. In 1972, Charles took his first steps into the world of media with a local television program called The Chapel Hour, airing on 2 Atlanta TV stations and reaching 16,000 viewers. His clear, practical teaching style quickly caught people's attention. By 1978, his growing popularity earned him a national platform on the Christian Broadcasting Network. The program was rebranded as In Touch with Dr. Charles Stanley, and soon millions of people across America were tuning in. Charles didn't stop with television. In 1982, he officially established In Touch Ministries as a non-profit organization. This allowed his outreach to expand rapidly into radio, satellite, and eventually digital platforms. By the early 1980s, his sermons could be heard in nearly every major American city, and by the end of the decade, they were being translated into 114 languages and broadcast across 150 countries. Even before his rise to global fame, Charles had demonstrated a commitment to faith-based education. In 1966, while still in Miami, he founded the George Mueller Christian School, reflecting his passion for teaching children both academic and spiritual values. His vision for integrating faith into every part of life remained a central theme throughout his career. As First Baptist Atlanta grew, so did Charles's ambition. Under his leadership, membership soared from 5,000 to over 15,000 by the 1990s. In 1997, he made the bold decision to relocate the church from its historic Midtown location to a new modern facility in Dunwoody that could seat 3,000 people. Though controversial at the time, this move reflected his forward-thinking approach and desire to prepare for future growth. Among the church's many popular programs was the Passion Play, a dramatic retelling of Jesus' final week on earth. Running from 1977 to 2011, the production involved hundreds of volunteers and became a beloved tradition that drew large crowds year after year. Always one to embrace new technology, Charles believed that spreading the gospel required constant innovation. He founded Messenger Lab, which developed solar-powered audio devices preloaded with sermons and scripture. These devices were designed for people living in remote areas without internet or electricity. Over 1 million units were distributed worldwide, reaching even the most isolated places, including Antarctica. At the height of his ministry, Charles's sermons were airing on over 4,000 outlets, in 127 languages, and across every possible platform, from radio and television to mobile apps and podcasts. In 1984, Charles's influence reached a new level when he became president of the Southern Baptist Convention. This was a time of fierce internal conflict within the denomination, primarily over the issue of biblical inerrancy. Conservatives and moderates were locked in a struggle over the future direction of the church. Charles narrowly won the presidency and served 2 terms, playing a key role in what became known as the conservative resurgence. His leadership helped solidify the SBC's more conservative stance for years to come. Behind the public success, however, Charles was facing serious personal challenges. His devotion to ministry often came at the expense of his family. His wife, Anna, felt increasingly isolated and disconnected from him. Their son, Andy, who would later become a pastor himself, witnessed the growing emotional distance between his parents. In 1993, Anna filed for divorce, citing that their marriage had become irretrievably broken. The news sent shockwaves through the evangelical world, especially given Charles's public image as a champion of family values. The divorce process dragged on for 7 painful years. During that time, Charles faced public criticism, lost radio syndication deals, and faced pressure from some church leaders to step down. He had previously stated that he would resign if ever divorced, but when the divorce was finalized in 2000, he chose to remain in the pulpit. This decision created tension within his staff and congregation, but many stood by him. Despite these personal struggles, Charles Stanley's impact on American Christianity remained enormous. He transformed First Baptist Atlanta into a national powerhouse, pioneered innovative media outreach, and influenced millions of lives through his sermons, books, and broadcasts. In the years following his death in 2023, his family began sharing more about his final days, shedding light on the private man behind the public figure. His final words to his son marked a moment of reconciliation, offering a glimpse into the complicated but ultimately loving relationship they shared. Charles Stanley's life stands as a powerful reminder of resilience in the face of hardship. From a childhood scarred by loss and violence to becoming one of the most influential religious leaders in modern history, he demonstrated what can be accomplished through faith, determination, and courage. His motto, "Obey God and leave the consequences to Him," guided him through every high and low. Yet, his story also highlights the personal sacrifices that often accompany great public success. The honesty shared by his family after his passing provides a fuller, more human picture of a man who, for all his accomplishments, was still searching for peace and healing until his very last moments. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to support the channel by hitting the like button, subscribing for more captivating stories, and sharing your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement helps us bring you more amazing content like this.